This is Rob Kidd on ABC Tropical North.
7:43. Do you feel safe around your suburb when you go out for a walk or even heading off to work? There's a lot of talk in regards to Jack's Law. This is the new adult crime, adult time laws that we've been speaking about for quite some time, not only here in Mackay with Sundays and the Isaacs, but Queensland-wide. I want to find out what that means for you and your family and your business with our local state member, Nigel Dalton, who's on the line this morning. Nigel, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Now, we want to talk about Jack's Law, adult crime, adult time. We've been talking about this for quite some time, making Queensland safer laws. Can you give us a snapshot of what it means?
Okay, well, the Mackay region will benefit from 20 new adult crime, adult time offences. So those offences are in addition to the ones which we passed before Christmas, which we promised when we went to the election. So after an expert panel has had a look at the other offences which need to be included, this is the next group that they are adding to that legislation, and that will be passed through Parliament this week. So the Jack's Law is slightly different. Mm-hmm. It's a different sort of leader off that. Mm-hmm. And that's where over the last few years, the police have had the power to search people without any suspicion for knives. And they search them with a wand. You might have heard the expression wanding. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure even Sergeant Smith has been into your studio to show you how that works. It's basically a metal detector. So that law, Jack's Law, is now being extended not just to the times when police where they can use it. So sometimes they can use it just in railway stations or transport hubs or shopping centres or wherever that might be. Now it's a public place. So anywhere where the public have right of access, the police will be able to wand people, search people for bladed instruments, knives, and they will be able to deal with the consequences.
So let's talk about the adult crime and adult time, because we have been talking about this for so long. We want to make Queensland safer with these new laws. So anyone using cars to endanger police, rape, ramming emergency vehicles, attempted murder, arson, torture, is that all?
No, there are actually 33. So, there are lots of other offences which the general public probably wouldn't be able to recall that often, because there are offences which are tricky ones to define, to find the evidence for. So if you were using an unlawful motor vehicle whilst on social media, for example, that has increased from 5 years to 12 years imprisonment for a juvenile. Unlawful use of a motor vehicle, as you've just said, unlawful use of a motor vehicle when under circumstances of aggravation has gone from 7 years to 14 years, so that's doubled. So there's a lot of those offences for a juvenile offender have increased. And basically, we're looking at making sure that youngsters understand the consequences of law. But we're not just leaving it there. We're actually doing a lot in the other spaces of early intervention and putting people back on track. So there's funding going into the communities where we know that youngsters are struggling and they have committed offences and they need some help. So the 3-week reset program is being funded, and then the back on track is when a youngster is in custody and is about to be released.
Can I just say, I think we've heard a lot of this before. It's like you can have every law under the sun, but these juveniles, they don't care.
Well, that's where we're going to the early intervention program. So when we identify somebody who's going off the rails, before they go off the rails, before they fall over the cliff, and before we have to pick them up and put them into an institution, a jail, we can actually start working with them to realign their understanding what living in community actually means. So there's a lot of work goes in that space. And from my previous experience, I'm very, very much engaged in early intervention, making sure people get the right understanding of what the law is and where that line is, where if they step over the other side of that line, that's when the consequences start happening.
Yeah, but they've been stepping over the line for years. With all due respect to you, Nigel, if there are more young people kept on remand, where are they going to be housed?
That's something which we'll just have to work on. For 10 years, the Labour government have not done anything about this. So they've reduced the fact that a youngster could not be put into custody unless it was the last resort. And therefore, people were constantly seeing an offender who had committed an offence weeks beforehand committing another offence and another offence and another offence. So we've cut that out. We've said, no, you can go on remand right from the very, very beginning because you need to be off the streets. And that's what the public want. That's what the community are crying out to me for. They're saying, why is so-and-so out on the streets when I know they've already committed so many offences? if we can cut off those people from recommitting those offences and realigning them into a sensible person within the community, then we're starting to succeed. And we're already seeing some pretty good results on the stats which are coming through the reduction of crime. It's not perfect. There will always be a bit of crime, but we don't want it to the levels where we've had it over the last 10 years.
I'm talking to our local state member, Nigel Dalton, this morning. Do these changes see youth offending records taken into account once they're an adult?
Yes, that's right, they do. So what your listeners may not be aware of, that when a juvenile reaches the age of 18 and commits another offence, the magistrate can't look at what happened in their previous juvenile history.
But now they can.
Now they can. So we actually had a case recounted by the Attorney General, Deb Fredington, in Parliament the other day. She just basically said, the judge said, normally you would stand in front of me with a clean record. Now I know exactly what you have done. You're going to prison. So on the first offence, when he was 18, he went to prison, as opposed to going through the revolving doors, which would start all over again. And maybe that person, if they continued committing, might go to prison 2 or 3 years later.
So a lot of these stats that we've been going on are 10 months old. So they are very, very old. So do you think it's a bit premature to actually claim the laws are responsible for the drop?
Well, I mean, we're looking at what it was this time last year to now. So yes, there are. Everything has to be compared with where it was in a previous life, whether it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or in this particular case, the stats that we've released, which are a year old. So this time last year, they were high, and now they've dropped by a considerable amount.
How do you know that the judges are going to follow through on this?
Well, that's why we live in a democracy. The judges are independent to the government, and they have to make those decisions.
Yeah, how many times the community has heard this so many times when we've put rules in place, they go before a judge and they're back out on the streets in hours. So you can guarantee for those who have been affected by crimes, and there is a lot of people, how can you assure the community that things are going to be different now?
The sentencing is higher, so therefore the bar for the minimum sentence will be raised as well. So in the judges' sentencing rules, magistrate sentencing rules, they have, I don't want to use the word algorithm because it's not that complicated, but they have a process which they go through for each person who is being sentenced. That is an independent area of the law, and we as politicians cannot interfere with that. Otherwise, we remove the democracy of our country.
So these rules have come into play. They're in place now. So if anyone breaks those rules today, using a car to endanger police, ramming emergency vehicles and doing horrible things, breaking and stealing cars and then filming themselves and putting that on social media, that law takes place today for that action.
That's right. Damaging an emergency vehicle moves from 7 years to 14 years. Endangering a police officer when driving a motor vehicle. So that could be a police officer who might be standing at the side of the road doing an RBT or something, and somebody's driving a motor vehicle.
Yep.
That offence has gone from the juvenile offence of 7 years maximum sentence to 14 years.
And do you expect there'll be any challenges to the laws? There have been concerns about the laws breaching human rights?
I imagine there could be. That's again where we live in a democracy, where we allow people to challenge what politicians have said. We believe this is the right action. We want to put victims first. We want to make sure that the victim has the human rights to live safely in their home, walk down the street, go to the shopping centre, drive their car, go to the servo. All of those types of things have to be done without the fear of violence, the fear of theft. And that is what we're doing. We're looking after the human rights of the victims in our community.
A local state member, Nigel Dalton, I really appreciate your time this morning.